Hi, this is Maggie from Crafts the Charm. Thank you for stopping by my channel. I'm so glad you're here. And you are watching video of me taking apart a broken chair that I found by the side of the road. And I was doing that over the summer. Right now it's about 20 degrees and pretty bleak out there. But I have all of those chair parts, the ones that I didn't already use, to make my trees and kings that I made, I think back in November. Today we're going to make something different. So what I do when I'm driving or exercising and I see a broken chair by the side of the road, if it has turned wood pieces that I think I can make into something else, I pick that up. And today I'm lucky enough to have pieces of two chairs, the white chair you saw me taking apart, and a brown chair that I also found broken by the side of the road. And I also have table legs. I was driving home one day and somebody had put out 4 table legs that were turned. I don't know if maybe they put out the whole table and somebody only wanted the top and not the legs, but I wanted the legs, so I was pretty excited. So what I want to see in this wood today is some snowmen. So starting with that table leg, I feel like the top of it really looks quite a lot like a snowman's hat. So I'm going to cut that off. And the way I cut this wood is with my Stanley mitre box and saw. And the reason I cut it this way and not with my radial arm saw is I'm afraid if I tried to use that saw that I wouldn't be able to get a straight or level cut because the wood is already turned and it's hard to get it sort of squared up to cut it. So I don't trust that I would be able to do it right with that saw, but with a handsaw, I feel like I can make adjustments and I can wedge it. I use pieces of paint stirrer sticks to wedge, and I have done so far a pretty good job of making level cuts that way. So it is a little bit time consuming and a little bit of a workout, but it means less sanding and no horrible mistakes. So I'm cutting off the hat here, and the reason I'm cutting that off is because I think I need to take out one of those 2 sort of circular pieces below it. So the bottom one will be the snowman's face, but that middle one is extra. So I'm also going to cut that off. And then down at the bottom, I'm going to cut off under that circular bit so he has something of a base to stand on. And so from the circular bit up to the face, and then with the hat attached on top, I have snowman number 1. Now, what I noticed about the bottom of this, or really it's the top of the table leg, is that there are 2 pieces there that kind of resemble a snowman made up of balls of snow. So the 2 bottom balls of snow of a snowman. And I have that little piece that I cut off from the top that was between the hat and the face of snowman number 1. So I'm going to cut these 2 pieces off as the bottom of a snowman and then use the top piece from before, and then I'll just need another hat for this snowman's hat. Now this one, because I do have a square piece, which is the top of the table leg, I probably could have done this on my radial arm saw, but since I was already making a mess up here, I figured I would just do it up here, give myself a little bit more exercise. And so I do have another table leg here, and I'm just going to cut the hat off of this table leg. It's the bottom of the table leg. And from my very first chair, my brown chair, I have a couple of pieces like this. I think they were at the bottom of the chair, separating the legs. And I think that it looks sort of like a hat, the top of it, or the side of it. So what I'm going to do is cut that hat a little bit shorter, and then I'm going to cut it at the bottom. So he's got kind of a belly and then a long thin neck and then a hat. And here's another one of those pieces. And for this one, I'm just going to use the hat. So I'm going to cut the hat off of this one to use on another piece. And my way of doing this is to always cut the top piece off first, so you have the most to work with. So I'm going to cut off the top of the hat, and then I'll cut off the bottom of the hat. I don't want to be left with like a tiny hat where I have to cut the top off of it. And that hat is going to go on this white piece from the white chair. So I feel like that sort of spoolish looking piece makes a good head. I'm just going to cut off all the bits above that. And then down at the bottom, I'm not going to cut it where it's narrow. I'm going to cut it where it's widest, so it widens out after the narrow part, just so it has a little bit more of a base. And unfortunately, there is a part there where another piece inserted, and it didn't come apart cleanly, so there is going to be like a little divot in the side of it at the bottom, but I don't think that's a big deal. So my philosophy here is you really don't need that many elements to communicate snowman to somebody, so I think the shape is not as important as you might think. 3 balls that are white communicates snowman. I think if you have 2 elements like that, you get snowman. So if you don't have the 3 ball shape, but you've got something white and it's got stick arms, then I think it communicates snowman. Or white with a hat and stick arms, I think it's going to communicate snowman. So I think we can be a little bit abstract and creative with the shapes. Alright, so I have all of my pieces for my 4 snowmen. You're mostly going to see me working on the 3 that need to be put together. The little one, the 4th one, which is all one piece, was my prototype. So I did him first and separately, and then I worked on these. So the first thing I'm going to do is just sand the areas where they're going to join together, because some of the cuts were a tiny bit rough and I just want them to fit together well. And I'm going to join these together with these little dowels you can see off to the left and wood glue. So I'm going to need to mark the centers of these and drill holes in them so I can insert those little dowels. So I just traced around the widest one and cut out a circle, folded it in half and folded it in half again to find the center and poked a pencil through the center. And then I'm just going to put that over the pieces of wood where they're going to join and mark the center point. And I'm just going to keep reducing the size of that circle down to the smallest piece as I mark my center points. And then I'm going to find a drill bit large enough to accommodate those dowels, and I'm going to drill a hole in the top of each of my pieces, or in the case of the one snowman who is 3 pieces, I'm going to have to drill a hole in the top and the bottom of one of the pieces. Now to join them together, I'm going to, well, clean them all off first and then put a good amount of wood glue in the holes and then insert the dowel into one of the holes. And I'm going to cover one surface with wood glue and then put the pieces together and clean off any excess glue with a damp towel. Now I don't have any kind of clamp that's large enough to clamp them, so I'm just going to use tape, put a piece of tape across the top and tape it down to the sides, and hopefully that's good enough. Now, once that wood glue had dried, I'm just going to use a little bit of spackle. There are a few little seams that I think could be neater, where I didn't cut them perfectly, but also one of the pieces from the table leg seemed to have been joined together and there was a gap there. So I'm going to fill that. And then on the white chair part, it has some decorative cuts in it that I don't picture working well as a snowman, so I'm going to fill those in with spackle as well. And then I'm just going to wipe the spackle down with a damp towel to smooth it out. Now, I painted my snowmen with a sort of priming coat before I drilled holes for their arms. I just completely forgot. I always intended to put arms on them, but I forgot. So I recommend you do this step next, which is why I'm showing the video out of order. So what I did was decided where I wanted the arms to be on each snowman, and that would be basically below the neck because I do plan to put a scarf on many of these. So I'm going to drill a hole straight through the snowman, which is wide enough for the wire that I'm going to use for their arms. So drill the holes now. I'll come back to the wire step. Let's go to the painting. Okay, so to paint them, I first did just clean them off because they did all come from outside. So just wiped them all down. So I'm going to paint these with Folk Art Home Decor chalk paint in Adirondack white. I'm using chalk paint so that I don't have to prep the surfaces so much. I don't have to sand them down or remove the old finishes. But that really only works if you then seal it after. Otherwise, the chalk paint can scrape off. And I'm considering this a sort of priming coat, but Adirondack white is the color that I'm going to use for the white parts of the snowman after, so it's also going to be the top coat for the white parts. I'm not painting the bottoms because I want the bottoms clean because they're going to sit on my furniture. And I am painting bottom to top. I have found that that works best. I can hold it by the top while I paint the bottom and then put it down on a surface and paint up to the top. All right, now for the arms. For the 3 larger snowmen, I'm going to be using this 4-strand multi-purpose wire that I got at the Home Depot. So what I'm going to do is feed it through the holes that I drilled in each of the snowmen and try to approximate the length of the arms that I want and then snip it off. And then I am going to put a little bit of hot glue in the holes just to try to act as a stopper, not really to hold the wire in place, but to keep it from sliding in and out. So once I have them with the wire and with the hot glue in, I'm going to figure out exactly how long I want the arms, considering the hands as well, and snip them, so make final adjustments, and then unwrap that wire at the end to make the hands. And for the hands, I'm going to leave the middle fingers longer, but snip what would be the thumb and the pinky, or it only has 4 fingers, but the thumb and the 4th finger to be a little bit shorter to make it look a little bit more like a hand. Now for that little snowman, I feel like this wire is just too thick. So I'm taking some paddle wire, some silver paddle wire, and I'm going to cut 3 lengths of it, and I'm going to wrap them together using the drill. So I'm going to hold the 3 pieces together and insert them in the end of the drill, and then hold the ends of them with a pair of pliers while I run the drill. That will wrap them together. I'm then doing the same thing, putting it through the hole I drilled in the snowman and opening up the fingers. This guy only has 3 fingers because I only wrapped 3 pieces of wire together, and adding just a little bit of hot glue as a sort of a plug in the hole. Okay, so now it's time for the fun painting. So I'm going to paint their hats and their arms. I want their arms to be more brown and twiggy looking, and I'm also going to paint their hats brown. Now, one thing I think about these snowmen is that you can decorate them however you like, and you can even change them up for the seasons. Brown is fairly neutral, so I feel like the ones with brown hats could be restyled for different seasons. But if you want to make these for Christmas, or if these colors just aren't your jam, you can paint this however you like. So I'm using Apple Barrel Burnt Umber, and I'm going to paint 2 of the hats. Plus I did the little guy's hat this way. And I'm going to paint their arms. And the arms took 2 coats because I just saw places where I had missed. Now for the 3rd hat, that's my tall snowman. I'm using Folk Art Home Decor chalk paint in Cascade. This is one of my favorite colors. And these colors, the Adirondack white, the Cascade, the burnt umber, and then one more color, a metallic color called chocolate brown, are all the colors that I'm going to use in this project. So my Cascade is chunky, so I had to mix it with water, and it took a few coats to get the hat covered. Okay, so now it's time to make that look good. I'm going to use this Folk Art multi-surface in chocolate brown, and I'm going to dry brush it over everything that I've painted. So I'm going to dry brush the arms, and I'm going to dry brush the hats. So to dry brush, you get paint on the brush, but then you brush most of it off before you start painting with it. I was a little heavy-handed with it. I really like the way it looks, and so I didn't take that much off the brush as I did this. I did want to make sure that I hit all of the raised surfaces, so I did the bottoms of the hats and the tops of the hats, like the top edge of the hat, and I brushed over the top of the hat, even though there isn't really any texture there. Now the paint's called chocolate brown, but it's really very gold looking. once it dries. So I think this is a really pretty look. Okay, and once I had the hats and the arms painted, I gave them all their top coat, which again is the chalk paint, the Adirondack white. And here, if I accidentally got a little brown onto the white, here I could touch that up and give them their final coat. Now, I decided that they needed faces, and I pretty much paint faces like a toddler. So look on the internet, find a face you like, and paint that face on your snowman. Or maybe you're a lot more talented than I am, and you can paint a cute face on your snowman. I basically just gave them eyes, 3 of them. I gave mouths to one. I decided that his muffler was wrapped up around his mouth and you couldn't see it. And I decided to give them blue carrot noses and use the brown a little bit to put marks, on the carrot. I also gave it a little bit of a shadow. I mixed some of the blue and the brown to do a little low light on the carrot, but I don't think it's really noticeable. And then I did take the metallic chocolate paint and put that over the brown features as well. Now for the snowmen themselves, they're basically done. I'm going to give them a coat of Mod Podge to seal in all of that paint. Now for accessories, I'm going to make them some scarves and some snowflakes. So for the scarves, I decided to use paper twist. Because they're made of wood, I wanted to use something that had a woody look, so I didn't want to use fabric. And paper twist has a nice texture to it. So I have this tan-colored paper twist, which is about 1 inch wide, maybe a tiny bit longer, when I untwist it. So what I did was I untwisted some in lengths that I thought would work well as scarves for the snowmen, and then I painted it with the burnt umber. So I painted one side, let that dry completely, and then painted the other side. Be careful if you paint it on paper, like I did here, because when you soak it through with the paint, it will stick to the paper. So just be careful to lift it as it's drying. And then after I had painted both sides, I took the metallic chocolate paint and dry brushed it over. Now you're going to want to do this the short way because that way you'll pick up the texture. And I did that on both sides. I also painted some blue and did the same thing with the metallic paint so that I could give them either a brown scarf or a blue scarf. I also wanted to give them some snowflakes, so I have these small wooden snowflakes which I picked up at the Dollar Tree. The really pretty ones were stickers, and I only had 2 of those, and then the less pretty ones are just wood. So I did 4 of those, and I painted them with the blue, and then dry brushed the gold from the edges of the snowflake inward on both sides. So for the small snowman, I just pressed his arms together in front and then put the snowflake between his hands. And because his arms were pushing inward, he holds the one snowflake, and he seems pretty happy about his one snowflake. For the other 5 snowflakes, I took some black paddle wire and cut a length that was longer than those snowflakes laid end to end. And then I hot glued it to the backs of the snowflakes, or I looked at the snowflakes, figured out which side I liked the best, and glued it to the other side in a sort of arc. And I just wrapped the wire around the hands of one of the snowmen, and he gets to hold those. For the tall, thin snowman, not the tallest, I found a stick in my yard. That's his walking stick. And I just painted it brown with the metallic chocolate paint brushed over, and I just put that in his hand. And then for the scarves, I wrapped the scarves around their necks and secured it with a little dot of hot glue. Now for the very tallest snowman, I thought he would look really cute with birds on his arms, and I'm going to show you in another video how I made the birds. But they have little wire feet, so I could just attach the birds along his arms. And that was it for their accessories. I think there are other cool accessories you could add, and again, I think if you wanted to change them out season to season, you know, at the holidays they could be carrying trees or wreaths. They could be carrying hearts at Valentine's Day. It's still cold at Valentine's Day. Or a little lantern might be cute. Those are all things I considered. Stars would be nice. But this is what my snowmen are carrying right now. I'd love to know what you think of them. If you have a favorite, if you have any suggestions, please tell me in the comments. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy this sort of content, please subscribe to Crafts the Charm. Thank you for spending time with me today. Take care.